guys, I guess, in the seminary that want to show off in their early years, huh? So here we go. This is a really, really big topic, and I stumped some people this morning, but I think my question was a little confusing too, so we'll see what you guys think, okay? Have you ever heard of the term active participation? By show of hands, have you ever heard that word used before? Wow, okay, we're going real good right now. Okay, good, so you guys have heard this. So the quote that comes from this document, Mother Church earnestly desires that all the faithful should be led to that fully conscious and active participation in liturgical celebrations, which is demanded by the very nature of the liturgy. Okay, so this is a definition in the document. You got it? Take that snapshot in your mind, okay? Here you go. Active participation means more people need to lector the extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion, altar serve, and usher at Mass. And if I were to add a word to this slide, I could say something like, active participation means only more people need to lector the extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion, altar serve, and usher at Mass. What do you think? True or false? False. Yeah. So the fullness of what we understand active participation to be is not by getting more things to do, right? Of course, we can enter into the liturgical life of the church, enter into the Mass if we are doing these things. But then if it's necessary for us to, in order to actively participate, to do these things, then we have 800 people here on a Sunday, right? And we got to divide up who lectors, all right, who wants to read 3 words, and then, all right, you read the next 3, and then, okay, and then for the gifts, we'll just do a chain all the way up to the front. That's our usher or something, right? And everyone gets a basket for the money. Like, no, right? I mean, we don't need that for active participation. And we'll keep going on this for a few more slides, so hang with me. So then what does it mean then to actively participate? Like, what does this word mean, this buzzword that you hear thrown around? Here's a tidbit from paragraph 30. To promote active participation, the people should be encouraged to take part by means of acclamations, responses, psalmody, antiphons, and psalms, as well as by actions, gestures, and bodily attitudes. And at the proper times, all should observe reverent silence. So you're like, wait a second. Active participation, I hear that word. It's embodied by reverent silence. Like, what? Like, active participation, I'm going to be doing, right? I'm out there, I'm moving. My bodily gestures, I'm singing, I'm responding to Father, and I'm singing the songs, right? Let's keep going a little bit. So in those terms, in the term active participation, active means movement or activity.
False.
What do you think? That's what we're going for. Active participation means movement. Okay, good. We got some false in the room. Okay. So then, what does it mean in the first place then? Like, what does this word mean? Why are we saying active when it doesn't mean moving? It's like, okay, Deacon, please. Like, active means movement. Like, stop messing around, right? So let's look at it. So, participatio axiosa, okay? It's the internal connection with liturgical action. It's what Christ is doing in his church in the liturgical rites. And that third bullet point, this participation is about where my mind and heart are. Now, if you've heard like these church words thrown around, you hear a lot about the word heart, right? You might hear it from the Old Testament, or you might hear it in the context of the New as well. It's like, change our hearts, or conversion of our hearts. Like, I mean, we're not talking about like our anatomical heart that like pumps blood through our body, right? This is like the interiority, the central existence of our person, our hearts. It is this idea embodied much beyond than what we can understand in terms of like this anatomical thing that pumps blood, but we use the same word for it, right? But the catch is, though, is that somehow our external actions facilitate this internal connection, this internal worship of God with our mind and with our heart when we pray. Because we can't get away from it. We are a body and soul. We have to treat both in our spiritual life. We have to remember that we have both. In the history of the church, if you want to see where things go really awry in terms of spiritual life and prayer or devotions, look at when they've emphasized that we're all spirit or we're all soul or we're all a body and our body's evil. It gets real messy really quick and people say things that they shouldn't have said, right? It just gets really odd. So we have to remember that reality in terms of that we're a body and soul. Let's keep going on active participation then. So here we go. Thinking about this body and soul dynamic, this internal worship, internal disposition of the heart, okay? I can actively participate by not listening to the readings, reading the bulletin, and zoning out during the homily. Okay, yeah, I mean, someone wants to stay true, right? I mean, come on, right? So obviously false, right? And I will say, just to rest assured, I mean, you know, if you found yourself in that story with like Cardinal George and you felt that way, or you've ever zoned out during the context of a homily or mass, I mean, come on, right? Like everyone is there, we're human, right? But it's not something that we want to do every single Sunday. Now, I talked to my dad and gave him a hard time. So he had this practice, and if you're in this place, if you have this certain posture during Mass, because you have a back problem or a knee problem, like I'm not picking on you or anything, but in any case, my dad is a guy that doesn't necessarily have those problems yet, right? He's not really there yet. He's in his early 50s. He can still kneel, right? So I look over at Mass as a deacon, because I've never really looked at my dad from any other perspective. Like I'm in the pew, like, you know, 3 or 4 people over him with my brothers and my mom, right? I don't really look over at him. And so I see him, I'm standing at the altar deaconing, and I look over, and he is in what I call the 3-point stance, right? So he's kneeling, and then he drops his bottom on the pew, okay? And then to add to it, he's sitting there like this, like sprawled out on the front of the pew. And afterward, I mentioned, I'm like, Dad, like, what's going on? Like, why are you sitting like that? And then the first time I'm with my mom, and she says something about it too, you know? And he's like, well, I'm there. Like, I'm present, like, I'm kneeling. And I'm like, well, I mean, you know, is there any way that we display that differently? I mean, what does it say about us if we're, you know, like our hands are folded, or even if we're at our sides, or we're kneeling, or we're even, like I said, if you have that back problem, knee problem, whatever it is, and you're sitting on the pew while you're kneeling. But then, like, to add to it, you know, it's really like, you know, contemplative, you know, I'm like, Dad, come on, like, you know, does it help you, or like, you know, and he's like, oh, I'm just comfortable, so I'll work on it. I'm like, okay. All right. So first time you see your parents from that perspective, it's a weird reality, you know, being ordained in that sense. So here's another one. During the Mass, I offer my prayers, works, sufferings, and joys to God through uniting them to the sacrifice of Jesus Christ on the cross. True or false? Yeah, so this is getting at this idea. I talked about earlier how in terms of like the Latin liturgy before 1962, before the 60s, right? There was this reality of like Father being up at the front, and like he's doing his thing, and then you're doing your thing. And like you're in the pews and you're praying your devotion. There's all these little Mass booklets. There might be like, you know, different people going from like statue to statue or station to station. And then when the bell rings, everyone knows, like, oh, pay attention, something's happening up there, right? I mean, it's just, have any of you ever experienced that before? Or have ever remembered that from your own experience of liturgical life? Because I will say too, one of the things that can sometimes divide older clergy from the younger clergy as I'm starting my ordained life is they talk about how these changes are happening and like the younger clergy want to do things differently or they want to go back or something. And my response was like, well, Father, I mean, this is from 1962 to 1965. So to me, in my mind, this is the same thing as the Council of Trent in the Middle Ages. I mean, I wasn't alive, or I didn't have any like stake in the game, but I get it. So there are certain, you know, there are priests that are certainly around today that have witnessed the changes of this council and lived it, and that started their priesthood before it, and then had to change after it, and it's totally impacted their whole outlook on their ministry differently. So in any case, going forward, keeping that in mind, like, you know, a lot of the younger guys, a lot of the younger seminarians, to them, like I mentioned, and our professors made this joke. He's like, you know, to you guys, this is like the Council of Trent in the Middle Ages. Like, this is not something you experience in the same way as the people that are around today have experienced that are older than you. So in any case, I want to stick, though, with this idea that during the context of Mass, by our baptism, We are there to offer and join all of our sacrifices, all of our joys, all of who we are, our whole interiority of our being to God in this moment. One of our teachers at school commented that he has a 3-year-old daughter, and he said during that time when the priest elevates the chalice, he has taught his daughter to, in her mind, take a little piece of paper that she has written her prayers, her intentions, who she wants to pray for, and then drop them into the chalice. Then when the priest elevates the chalice, he's offering that to God, and so too your petitions, your prayers are offered to God too. And I said, well, that's a great image. It's not only just for that 3-year-old, right? It's something easy for them to grasp, but why not all of us too? Why not all of us too in that context? We're not just passive players in terms of when we're there at the Mass. We are called to actively be present, to offer our sacrifices, to offer our prayers to God too, and join the sacrifice to what the priest is offering on the altar and what Christ is working in that moment.